Hello and welcome to Sacred Democracy. I'm Maddi Cheers with my special guest here today, Phil MacRuari. Today's topic is sacred politics. And we are looking at, as we call it, that in looking at the Great Law of Peace. The Great Law of Peace is my guideline for doing sacred politics, and we're going to look at two aspects of what's recommended in the Great Law of Peace as far as having a real democracy that represents all the people. And the two things we're going to talk about today have to do with having more than two parties. In the original democracy of the Haudenosaunee, there were 9 political parties, and there were also very strict guidelines about who could be a leader. So that when we say anybody but a Democrat or Republican 2020, it's because when you look at what happened with the latest bailout deals, with who's being put up and run as the presidential candidates, you really start to get a picture of there not really being two parties. There being one big party concerned more with keeping each other in power than they are concerned with us. So Phil has decided to run for Congress this year. And really, I'm thrilled about that. And I really actually want to turn it over to you, Phil, right now to talk about why you made this decision.
So why I made the decision to run now, because I may have looked into the future and thought it might be a better time when, maybe it's more established in the political world or to act in my mental health activism. But from dealing with my clients, right? So I work, and I think, from our last show, we talked about that I work with marginalized youth, right? A lot of kids with autism spectrum disorder. And those are kids from, almost kindergarten age up until 19 or 20 that I work with. And then, also with kids with just behavior problems generally. So not on the spectrum, but have trouble kind of conforming to the behavior that's necessary in school. And, when I started that work, right, and I was finishing up a school psychology program, and I was looking forward to kind of serving my community as a school psychologist. But the more I learned about psychometrics, the more I learned about where our priorities actually were as educators and mental health providers, I started seeing a pattern. And that pattern was that people are being exploited. Teachers, students, mental health providers, and mental health, consumers. And man, I hate those words. The we use as consumers, because although it is a product, but it shouldn't be a product. And that's right. Part of why I decided to run was I saw at the end of the day that we weren't mindfully approaching how we're doing education or mental health, where it's kind of mindless. And at the end of this mindless system that we have is profit. Right. So the only thing that it's really serving and the overarching goal it's serving. So I suppose it is mindful in the fact that it serves profit mindfully. And if you don't fit into that mold, there's no room for you anymore, right? And I saw the people I work with, working class people who, live check to check and month to month. And I saw the type of problems that we don't address in preparing people to be school psychologists or telling them when they're becoming mental health providers, right, or educators. We're not actually looking at the core problem, which is always material wealth. Yep. And it is about poverty and it's about inequality. And the systems that serve that and kind of reinforce that, right, have now got their claws into, our healthcare and our mental health care and our educational systems. And now we have a for-profit public education system. Right. Where it's all contracted out to, and I worked for some of these, organizations where they're private organizations that are now taking the positions of public would normally be publicly funded spots, so they're taking, school psychologists were those were good jobs to have, right, if you could get them. Now they're kind of being split up and making sure there's no benefits for them, right? So everybody's being part of the gig economy, and now you're being asked to do and this is true of a lot of mental health providers, right? If you're working in, outside of the public sector, is it like you have to write reports on your own time? That's unpaid labor. And these organizations that hire you as independent contractors, they know that, but they also know that you're not in this for the money, like a lot of teachers, right? So that labor of love means that you're more able to be exploited in that way. And teachers know this because they spend their own check, their own money on, supplies, and they have to go out of their way for unpaid time to be calling parents after school and all these things it's unpaid labor, right? And we're actually asking for them to pay for things. So there's like a drain on them. So when I saw all this, and then I see, basically it's the same systemic problem in all of our problems in society, right? Which is that when there's a for-profit motive behind things, right, you allow corruption to happen. And these are the rules, kind of the laws of behavior, which kind of, I think, makes me especially qualified in a way that nobody else running for Congress, maybe in the United States, I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of Congress people running this time. And it's great, a lot of insurgent candidates, and I love it. And democracy should be open to everybody, every single person. Doesn't matter your history or your background or your education level, you should be running. Not your race, not your gender, not your sexuality, none of this stuff. Run for office, everybody, like right now, get up and go. But so I see this, and like I watch this gatekeeping, whether it be in like these, elite institutions and colleges, right, who gatekeep psychological knowledge in order to keep them in the positions that they're in, right? And so if I make this knowledge to help people's lives free, then all of a sudden, like, I have lessened my value as a commodity.
Right.
And so I don't want to do that. So, but we see this with politicians, and they never get out. No. I think somebody, he was an English reporter, Maddi, he's good on some stuff. I don't agree with everything, but that's the way it should be with reporters and people in the media. You shouldn't agree with everything somebody says. If you do, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
So, but he was talking about the fact that, like, once you're elected to office in this country, like, you hold that title for life for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you governor whoever if you haven't been a governor for 35 years? Why are you Senator, why are you Senator Biden if you haven't been or Vice President Biden if you haven't been Vice President for 8 years? You're Citizen Biden, right? You're Citizen Clinton. You're not former Secretary Clinton or whoever it is, right? Whoever it is, right?
Right.
I can't think of the people who are out of office right now, but, John Boehner. So they don't go like, he's Congressman John Boehner, right? That's what he'll be forever.
Forever. And he gets paid as Congressman John Boehner forever because they forever have their health care and they forever get their salary.
Yeah. Socialism for them, individual rugged capitalism for the rest of us.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and but these John Boehners is a perfect example, who's now basically in the marijuana industry after spending 30 years trying to lock people up for pot. Now he's making money off of it, which is a perfect distillation of what's wrong with our system.
Yep.
So at the back end of, and I think, a lot of your viewers know, at the back end of every one of these positions, congressmen, senators, whoever, there are millions of dollars in lobbying and speechifying, and creating these nonsense nonprofits that really only serve to have galas and for everybody to slap each other on the back and tell each other they're such moral people because they hold these galas where they say that, we're taking care of the underserved and we're doing it. And we're doing it with a $5,000 a plate dinner.
Right.
It's a joke. It's a joke. It's all a joke. And so
it is.
I'm running for Congress because I shouldn't be running for Congress. I'm running for Congress because I'm brash, I'm rude, I'm all the things that they don't like about working class people. The only reason why I'm even in a position to do this, right, is because basically through, my father's labor, right, who was able to give me the amount of privilege to be able to go back to school and to borrow money to do these things that most people would never be able to do, right? And I'm very open about that. I'm unashamed. It's like, because I worked very hard. And I found myself in my 30s not being able to pay my bills. I never not worked, and I worked extremely hard. But yet, at the end of this, there was nothing. It was a dead end. And so in order to go back and try to start life over, most people cannot do that. So, and they're trapped, and that causes a bunch of mental health dysfunction and blah, blah, blah. But getting caught up in the system and the machinery and saying, like, I want to go do this. I wish I go back to school, but it will cost me $150. Now I still have $150,000 in loans, so that I could go back and serve the community, right, and do something that I could live with, like live a life that was worth living, not just for helping, blank Fortune 500 company add a little bit to their balance sheet so that maybe my 401k gets a little boost. Even, it's working those 60-hour weeks, not getting to see your kids, not doing these other things, commuting to the city. Like, that's what we're doing. 40-hour week is a 60-hour week for Long Islanders.
That's right. And that's what people are talking about when we talk about when this pandemic is over, how do you want life to change? We talk about the speed and the stress of life in this country, and how that's led to, like you said, so much mental illness, and how that's led to people who are just completely unhappy with their lives, a huge, ridiculous antidepressant industry. And that's what we have to look at. We have to look at, why are these industries more important than us? We have to look at that everybody in Congress gets donations from Big Pharma. That everybody in Congress.
Well, nearly everybody. We have a few young Congress people and people who are coming up who have rejected this entire paradigm, but
yay for them.
But there's only a handful of them. So but sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, but I mean that when we have to really start to pay attention to who is lying to us and who is telling us the truth. Yes. So there is a lot of lying going on, and I especially. If you're looking at Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, we impeached Donald Trump for doing what Joe Biden did, what he did for his son when he went to the Ukraine and threatened to withhold money, which he admits. There's a video of him doing this, admitting to this, that he threatened to withhold U.S. money allocated by Congress so that they would fire the person prosecuting his son's company. So this is exactly the same character. So we have to stop electing these people who have this kind of character.
So I would agree that overall, right, just from a moralistic point of view, that they were, and I would kind of say what even what I think a better corollary for that would be to look at the Hunter Biden stuff, right? I think that is completely legitimate. I think that, and then the fact that like American citizens who are the sons of vice presidents and senators and whatever can sit on the boards of foreign corporations is obscene.
Oh, sorry.
Right? That's okay. Yep. Yeah, but no, it's obscene. And so at the end of the day, but there is a difference between, and listen, to be honest with you, and like I say this, I completely empathize with why people voted for Trump, and I don't disagree with every single thing that he does. But on the back end is and he's doing this now with the states, is he's using executive power just like, a mob boss would, basically saying oh, that's a really nice state, and those are some nice ventilators you got. It'd be a shame if they never got there. And that's illegal. We have laws against that are written. The Joe Biden stuff, it was legal. The Hunter Biden stuff, it's legal. It's wrong. It is immoral. It should be illegal, and people should be going to jail for that. But right now they're not. And I'm not going to get into the semantic argument, because it's Trump, and I don't think Trump is a symptom of the problem. He is not the problem, right? And we should be thankful for Trump at this point, because one, he has laid bare how corrupt our system is, because he doesn't know how to hide it very well. So. He's not quite as wily, and he's authentic in that way, and that's why he appeals to people. And I get that, and he's right that they're getting screwed over by these people. He's naming the right names. He's not looking at himself too. But when he says, "Listen, I'll make Hillary Clinton do whatever I want because I donate to her campaign," he was right. And there was all these pictures of them hanging out, and them and the Epsteins, and they're all gross, and they all need to go. And if you're defending President Trump right now, I think you should really examine that. And if you're defending Joe Biden, you should go and examine that, right? And if you're still caught in this red-blue paradigm, I know we're going to get into that next, but the corruption is bipartisan.
It is.
And not only that, but so Democrats and Republicans will both hang these issues out there for us, right? So we'll say, let's say immigration is a great example. where it's like the Chamber of Commerce loves illegal immigration. The Chamber of Commerce needs illegal immigration, undocumented immigration. That's what they need, because if they don't have that, they're not going to be able to meet their, they're not going to be able to create profits. So, and we know this in our society, it's just like wink, wink, nod, nod. Nobody is actually locking up the guys who own the farms who are hiring the farmhands. No one is putting the meat packers in jail.
Nope.
No one, and so it's like, it's a joke. And so it's like they're using, and they know that when they bring new people into community, and there's other people who are working people or poor people in that community as well. And now you have two sets of people, right, who are living, week to week. You put disparate cultures and disparate people in those tight, financial circumstances, and you're going to get cultural clashes.
Absolutely.
And that's what we see. And then when you have our leaders to fail to acknowledge, like, no, that's racism. That's not, we've invited these issues, these conflicts into our communities because we need more cheap exploitable labor. We're not talking about that, right? No. We're just saying, like, hey, don't, and like this is the part where it's like, I'm definitely not, on the Jeff Sessions is gone, but like, I'm not screaming MS-13 everywhere I go, right? But I'm also not going to say that like it doesn't cause cultural clashes in communities, because we've seen this the world over. And yes. As an Irish person, right, and you got my 1st Brigade flag there in the back, and whatever. I'm not going to get that, but Civil War regiment, all Irish, and they fought bravely. They best, some of the best in the Civil War. Regardless, the British, and the reason why there's conflicts in Northern Ireland is because the Irish didn't want to work for the, building the railroads and working in the factories when the British industrialized Northern Ireland. And they said, no, we're not going to do this. They go, okay, well, that's fine. We're just going to bring in these poor Presbyterians from Scotland who will do it. And they're also more loyal to us. And we can kind of reap the benefits of these. We'll weaken you because now you have to clash with these people that you have a cultural and religious clash with. And we'll reap the economic benefits of this conflict. And they did. And you could even say, so the Irish and like the hillbillies, we'll call them, like these are the Scotch Irish who blazed the path forward into the Western wilderness, right? The policies were set by the crown and by the colonies to open up that land for expansion, right? They didn't. And when these poor folks who just wanted to escape the boot of the wealthy folks went to the frontier to get the only type of life they could, and they were hard-scrabble people from the west of Scotland and from Ireland, and they were poor and they were hungry for freedom and for that thing. And sure, it happened at the expense of other poor, like for that part, the indigenous people, right? People without power. But the powers that be put those people at odds. Yes.
That's exactly what they did.
And if they offered land to those people in the settled parts of the colonies, then they wouldn't have to go blaze that path into the Western frontier. But we'll just point and we'll call them like, yes, well, it was just all the hillbillies and the terrible people that did this. And obviously it wasn't us, erudite Declaration of Independence writing, George Washington put a wig on type of people. No. That was those savage hillbillies that the Scotch Irish that came here, and they were uncivilized, and that's who killed all those Indians. That's who killed the indigenous. Not the smart people in Philadelphia and Boston.
Right. Exactly. And that's what's happening now.
Yes.
Exactly, with the immigration issue, with the welfare issue, is that our leaders are pitting us against each other without ever listening to us. Nobody's listening to us and what we want.
Yes, absolutely. So think about Standing Rock, where you have an indigenous population, the Dakota Pipeline access, where you have two sets of people, the people who are hired to protect that pipeline, who are trying to earn a living, who are working people as well, versus the poor exploited people who are having a pipeline run through their land, which spills all the time. And like they could have put it through Bismarck, but no, they had the power not to. So we could do it to the poor people. We could do it to the indigenous, to the marginalized people. And they did that. And then they sit back in the oil companies and they watch these people clash, right? So they can get what they want. And there's no skin off their neck. There's nothing ever happens to them.
No.
And now and because things get politicized, now you have people like rooting for oil pipelines. Like it's,
because because people think that their job, their well-being, their life is dependent on taking one side or the other. That's the way the Democrats and Republicans have always played it. If you're on my side, I'm going to secure your job. The oil pipeline will go through. Oh, if you're on my side, I'm going to see that it doesn't go through, and I'll get you welfare, and I'll get you all the reparations and all the things, all the promises that have never happened, that have never been followed through on.
Right.
So it's time for us, the people, to really examine what is going on. And it's time for us to understand that this is not going to change as long as we maintain this red, blue system. Yes. That we have got to start voting for other people. There are, what are there, 5 other political parties on every ballot in every state. You can vote independent, you can write in. There are ways to do this, but you really have to face the fact that nothing will change if all we do this November is elect a bunch more Democrats and a bunch more Republicans.
That's right. And, it's a lie that it's a two-party system. It's a two-party system because the two parties say it's a two-party system.
Right.
And because a Bull Moose party was a party, and even the Democrat, Republicans, all these things, there's evolutions of these parties. But I think the problem with us as a society and as an empire is this what we are. And anybody who denies that we're an empire doesn't know what an empire looks like. And things in modern times take different forms than they did in ancient times, right? So, but we're a lot like Rome in a way where we export our culture. They were a multicultural society too, and reached across the known world at that point. There was Rome committed atrocities, right? They committed a genocide in Gaul, the French people. Celtic, they just murdered them willy-nilly and had the boot on the neck of people, right? But we can recognize thousands of years later the contributions to society and these the forward progress of either scientific or civic endeavors. It's a learning process, right? And humans are savage, like we are. There's no such things as certain ones are savages and we're civilized, because we look back and I look at the British who thought that they were the most civilized, and they were absolute animals.
Right.
So yeah, showing no quarter. Read your history books about the American Revolution and what they did to colonists, natives. It was hard. The Irish, what they did to their own cousins across there, it's an abomination.
It is. It's horrifying. I read a quote today. I actually posted it where it said, the most destructive force in the universe is the thought, I am better than you. The most creative force in the universe is the thought, we are one. So the more you see this country, this politician, this group saying we're better, we know, they don't know, they're deplorable, which I still maintain that is the statement that lost Hillary Clinton the election. Those guys are deplorable. Those guys are less than we are. When you hear people talking like that, those are exactly the people you don't want in government.
Yes, and so let me put it 100%. And really what it is, they're exploiting certain facts about human nature.
Right.
And so the fact is that people need to belong to a group. And when you have a group, that means that you have outgroups, you have other groups, others. Every human being does this. Nobody is exempt. And if you think that you are, you look at your life and see what your circles are, where your biases are, and then you understand who your tribe is. We use that word lightly, right? It's colloquial, it's fun, but it's literal. Yep. And I don't think people understand that. And they go, oh, it's so tribal now. It has always been tribal, right? But when we lived in a more monocultural society, right? When it was, basically just a white and black country, right? With a little mix here of Latino, when that was the case, the tribes it was easier to put people in the rich and the poor tribes, right?
Right.
It was easier for people to conceptualize that after the Great Depression, right? But we've always used immigrants and natives and black folks in this country to rile up the lower classes, to get them to believe, to work against their own interests, right?
And so, that's that victim. That's a card that is constantly played in government. that's another thing you should pay attention to. If somebody's out there telling you you're a victim of this one, or they're blaming that one, they do not have your best interest at heart. They're just playing on your emotions, trying to get you to elect them.
Yes, absolutely. And so, so this red versus blue thing, but this is actually human nature. And this is where, racism is a word that falls short of what we need it to be, because it means whatever it means to whoever's speaking, right? Yep. It's not a very, when you say murder, we know that means like, you intended to kill somebody and you killed them. When you say racism, that could be institutional racism, right? Which is something that exists. And it's like, of course, it's like people are biased and they create institutions. We see this with even artificial intelligence. If you have a bias and you write an artificial intelligence computer program, the computer program is biased. So, of course, and there's colorism and there's classism, which I think is behind more of this than people would really care to admit, is that, racism is a good cover for classism because it's a lot easier.
Totally.
It's like, and human being, you'll see this with, the types of, so the more like, let's say, different your religious dress is, I'm sure that there's a direct correlation between if you dress and look differently, right, the amount of hate that comes your way is more, because people can it's a lot easier for them to put you in that out group. That's it. And so race is the most heuristic and easiest thing to divide people because it's on its surface level. You can go, or not even saying race, I should say color, because race is not really defined. Because the way that, and I was talking about before, but the Irish were victims of racism and the Italians were the victims of racism, right? And the Polish were victims of racism, like Slavs, and but they were the same color, right? So, and this happens even in different societies. You can have the same amount of melanin in your skin, right? But somebody continues to see you as a different race.
The other,
but basically almost a different species, right? We don't say that.
Yes.
And it's so we can dehumanize you so that when time comes to kill you, because we are tribal animals and we are violent creatures. Like, if you guys seen chimpanzees and who we're closely related to? Have you paid attention to human history? It's a really violent society, and to forget that and to not acknowledge that, right, is a mistake. And right now, and this is part of when I talked about, I'll tie it back into kind of the work while I'm running for Congress, what they do to working class and poor people of either race, of all races, right? Or colors, I keep going back to that word. I want to stop using it, but it's hard because this is the language we use. Yep. Your physicality, your language, right? The Howard Sterns of the world, right? The working class hero, the guy who just says like all the bad words and calls it as he sees it. That guy, he can't be a serious person until he stops doing that, right? And then we'll say like, we're also afraid, and we see this in schools, we criminalize any type of aggressive behavior construed as violence, right? Because there's nothing that scares the elite and the wealthy classes more than the physicality of working class and poor men.
Right.
And you can see that. And yes, racism feeds into that because that's the easiest heuristic. Because now I know, bang, I think that you're poor. You're coming after what I want. I can put you in this box unless you show me that you're not. He's a college professor. Oh, he's cool. Like, and it's what we're talking about and where this always falls short, right? And where education really matters. It is a question of wealth, and it's a question of poverty, right? And being working class and having that boot on your neck. Because even if somebody's poor and you live in on Long Island, let's say, a $400,000 house, right? You are way closer to them in their situation that they're on benefits and they're in Section 8 and you are in the same boat as them. You just don't realize it. You are not free. You got a 30-year mortgage. You can't quit your job. You are in the same system, right? It's just like you have figured out a better way to do it a little bit, but that your neighbor right there who's getting benefits and all these other things, like they're more on your team, and they are not stealing from you. The people who are stealing from you are, the people at Walmarts, the Amazons, right? Elite. Amazon is the reason, and Lowe's is the reason why the hardware store here in Babylon, now I forgot the name of it, it's so sad, but that's why it's gone.
Right.
Not for any other reason. you know, and it's not the libs, and it's not the deplorables, and it's not like, the reason is that like the wealthier get wealthier, right? There is no debate. We have data, and
go ahead.
Yeah. So, and like right now, and I'll wrap this part up, but like we watch the stock market climb and have record gains over these last couple of weeks, while our unemployment numbers have ever been worse, and more people, tens of thousands of people are dying, and we don't, and like our system's laid bare, and it's gross. And yet what you see is like, oh, well, actually Amazon's doing fine. And it seems like now it seems like we have all these new drugs we're going to be able to introduce, and all these new products that will, work. And it turns all the commercials are be like, Toyota commercials are usually buy a Toyota. Now they're like, in these difficult times, buy a Toyota.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and you should all be angry about it. Everybody should be grossed out.
We should be. We should be angry. We should be grossed out. We should not be buying these products, because what we should be thinking about to turn our lives around, to take back our own power, is consuming less, is becoming more self-sufficient, and to recognize that there is nothing this government and every government in the world wants more than to see us more and more beholden to them. The last thing they want to see us do is become empowered, is become self-sufficient, and to stop consuming. Oh my gosh.
Never stop consuming. Don't do it.
Yeah. I have easily got 3 articles this past week on China taking over the world, which I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about this.
Well, it's for consumerism, but you're right. It's directly tied to it. Absolutely.
Yes.
China's power is denied to our consumer addiction. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly. How is China able to take over the world? Go to the dollar store. For $1, you can buy cheap junk that you can have lots. And why? Why do we really, it's we the people. We have to start accepting that responsibility that we do not need to consume cheap junk. Our plumber comes every 2 years to replace washers in our bathroom. That our house was built about 60 years ago. And he said that when my husband's grandmother owned the house, when stuff was made in the United States, he would come like 25 years to replace a washer.
Yeah.
But what we have done is we have allowed our corporations, who pay our politicians lots and lots of money, to move all our manufacturing offshore. And the stuff that's being made is garbage, and sometimes even poisonous garbage.
Yeah.
And we really need to pay attention to this, because this is all supported by our politicians.
100% who are beholden to corporations, and because it's like they don't make their money from being Congress people, right? They make it from all of their investment. You watch the insider trading. Democrats or Republicans are doing it. It's like during this COVID thing, they get inside information, and it is. I don't think people understand the scale of money.
No.
And they don't understand what $1 billion means to your $100,000 401k, right? You cannot even compare the two. Like it is, there should not be any billionaires. And if you are and I welcome, actually, if people, and I'm part of what I'm doing to promote the campaign too, is I want to talk to every 2nd district constituent, and especially the ones I disagree with. And like, because like, I'm worse. First of all, I think everybody is entitled to have a voice and be heard. Right. But on top of that, like if you can't have a discussion with somebody who vehemently disagrees with you, right, then you shouldn't hold your position.
No.
So, and you need to test this out on people who believe the opposite of what you believe, because if not, you don't know how good your argument is if you're just talking to the people who agree with you. And so you might very well be wrong, like on a lot of things, if you are not going outside of your bubble.
Yep.
And so it's important to keep that thing, to keep all that open. But, so saying like this corruption and, the fact that like there's no limit on campaign spending, we have these dark money behind super PACs, and it's like, and it all just goes to poisoning our water and sending our jobs overseas. Like, we're talking about that ticker going up, and the Dow was at, before it fell, it was at record 29,000 or something.
Right.
That is a measure, right, of how much money we've sent to China. That's a measure. And like you say, it's like, it's not. It's kind of measuring how much we've drained out of the working and poor people in this country.
Right.
That's where that's where that wealth came from. It didn't come from nothing. It came from you. And the reason why my grandfather, who was a plumbing inspector, you know, where he could make, and he actually took a pay cut from having his plumbing business to become a plumbing inspector, but he could afford a vacation home on one salary and had 8 children. Like, not to say, and that was an unprecedented time, right? But we've gone so far from that.
Yeah, well, that's what this house where we live. This was Bob's grandparents' vacation house. This was their little cottage on the water. This entire community was originally built as small vacation homes for people who lived in Brooklyn and the Bronx.
Yep.
And that's, people could afford that. There is nothing like that now.
No.
We're losing the middle class. You hear everybody say that, but you really
it's gone. We're not losing it. It has disappeared, because the middle is only in the middle if there's like 2 poles, right? But so let's say now let's spin the poles a little quicker, because I need to illustrate how far this has moved, right? So these are poor folks. This is people in poverty, right? And this is the middle class, and these are wealthy people, right? Well, the wealthy people are like all the way over here now.
Right.
So the middle class should be somewhere around like making like $5 million a year. And I don't think that that's the case, unless I missed it. And so and they're not making money, right? They're sucking money.
Right.
That's what they're doing. And that's what, like, they are not the people. And we've seen this watch this COVID thing. It's like, you know, when you want to have Walmart, thank our workers. What you should really be doing, right, is giving them a piece of those profits. Walmart.
Exactly.
Because if they are the heroes, and if they are the necessary and the essential workers, then I think that they should be calling more of the shots.
Exactly.
But instead, what we've seen during COVID, and, you know, listen, Governor Cuomo and Trump are both terrible with this. Like, they are just using this as an excuse to let their corporate buddies get more and more power.
Exactly.
And that's it. Because they only care about one thing.
That's right.
They are not patriots. They are not principled people. Not very, 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 very few of them. And the ones that are still are so corrupted by just the system that they're involved in, and they do not have any courage to stand up against it. So to your point about, let's say, the Russia scandal or impeachment, if this really was what it was, you guys should have been chaining yourself to the doors of Congress. You should have been like having sit-ins and like whatever that is, and like, you know, going to jail. You want to believe in something, or giving up some of your money. Yeah, well, listen, send me to Congress, and that's what I'm going to do. But for things that second district people care about, for Long Islanders, like talk about, you know, how many taxes we pay in as New Yorkers and what we get out of it from the federal government. It's absurd. It is
absurd. And whenever we want to change anything, the only thing we hear out of our state government or out of our federal government is, we're going to punish you. When we say we don't like the way education is, we don't like the testing, we don't like the national core curriculum. Oh, well, we're withholding your federal money. Oh, we're withholding your state money, or we're taking over your school because your test scores aren't high.
Right. And so
threats, it's not listening to us.
Well, and those threats are not coming from the people.
No.
Those threats, right, are coming from corporations who are not people. They are beings that feed and on basic labor. That's what they feed on.
Right.
And they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they don't know how to stop. And all those corporations only exist to grow more. And so everything will serve that end. They do not serve humanistic principles. They serve profit. That's it.
That's right. So, and I mean that it is time for us to be very, very honest with each other and with the people running for government. Absolutely. And start picking new people. So when we're talking about solutions, I mean, you know, all you need to do, the solution to this is you outlaw lobbying, which will probably take an amendment.
Yeah.
You outlaw money in campaigning, and you make it so that everybody's voice is heard on a stage in a debate, and the people get to decide. So it's a very simple solution. It's just that, do you see anybody in Congress proposing this? Anybody in the Senate? Anybody who's
no one with significant power? Absolutely not. So I mean, Nancy Pelosi certainly isn't, and Mitch McConnell certainly is not. So, I mean, because they both are 100 millionaires who have a lot of foreign held investments, and especially Mitch McConnell. But like, talk about China, geez Louise, Mitch McConnell needs to go. And that goes for a lot of politicians. And I think, what we need generally, and I think this is what everybody wants, and I think this is where my platform for my campaign, right? Mm-hmm. So, I do not hide politicians I support. So I support now, I support in the past, right? I think Bernie Sanders just let me down a lot by endorsing Joe Biden and going with this, right? But but this proves that when people like me, right? So Bernie's way too nice as far as I'm concerned when it comes to a lot of this stuff too. My friend Joe Biden, that stuff does not fly with people like me, right? But I think I appeal also to libertarian principles because I do share some of those, and I believe in this localized government. I do not want to be beholden to federal testing for schools. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. And our federal taxes, right? I want to be getting at least as much as I put in as a state. I do not want to be financing whatever the hell Mississippi is doing. I'm just not interested in that. Like, no, thank you. Or as New Yorkers, we want to be able to decide, our tax autonomy, right? To say that, like, no, I don't think we should be sending Saudi Arabia a few $1 billion a year. Right. Why would we help them in this war in Yemen when they're just a bunch of thugs? Like, what are we doing? And not only that, these are the dudes, as far as New Yorkers, right, who financed 9/11. Right. That's who's behind 9/11, guys. It's not a conspiracy. It's the Saudis. And it's Wahhabism, and it's right there in front of us. And all of our politicians are really close with them. Yep. So they will kill working class Americans, right, to serve their interests, and then they'll fly those guys out of the country on the first flight they get to protect them. And this MBS stuff, he kills an American journalist, right, and we all just lay down. Nothing happens to that guy. Right. Absolutely unbelievable. And so we are beholden to Chinese interests, to Saudi interests, right, to the interests of the floating billionaires everywhere in the world, right? And they have their boogeymen on the left and the right, whether you're talking about, the Koch brothers or George Soros. Everybody's like got their big bad billionaire, and they're all right. They're all bad guys. Right. Every single one of them.
If they were good guys, they would be taking their billions and they would be giving them to people right now. They would be going, oh, look, these businesses over here are not going to last through COVID unless I give them $1 million so that they'll still be in business when the fall comes. Because after all, I've got 60 billion.
Yeah.
Good people are generous. Good people care about the community. Absolutely. Good people. And I really, I have a lot of people who defend Melinda and Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, but I'm not even going to get into the.
Well, for those people who challenge them to read the criticisms, because the criticism, lay bare really how gross it is that these billionaires can just stick their fingers in things, mess them up, and then walk away. Or the fact that, if you want to talk about racism, right, the fact that Bill Gates is talking about birth rates in Africa should be concerning people. Why is he all of a sudden throwing lots of money into birth rates in third world countries? Well, why not in Utah? I tell you why. Because he's using them as guinea pigs, as a lab experiment, like he did with our educational system. Right. It's a farce. I'm not saying that Bill Gates doesn't try to have some good intentions. I think that he just is, drink these, he likes the smell of his own farts, so to speak, and just doesn't know how to, use my local colloquialisms. But
that's good. I like the local colloquialism. And when the Haudenosaunee teach us that our leaders must have shown us through their actions growing up that they are generous, respectful, thoughtful people who put others before themselves. This is why, because we do not have a democracy in this country. We have an oligarchy. Yeah. We are a country run by a group of people who are serving themselves, not serving us. And the only way we get rid of them is to vote differently. You're going to have to let go of your mythology, of your brainwashing.
Yes.
And as hard as that is to do, and it does take courage and it is difficult to face, we're going to have to start doing it if we're really going to change.
Absolutely. And just, real quick, talking about, kind of the platform and why I want to appeal to the people who believe that, right? One of the things is you should not believe anybody for anything. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Words don't mean anything. Actions mean things,
Absolutely.
right? Actions carry weight. Words are just words. An apology doesn't mean anything unless you change your behavior later, right? So I want to have a fully transparent and direct democracy to offer a fully transparent campaign and fully transparent, congressional office, and then kind of show people through. We have the technology to be like, anytime I have a meeting with somebody, any party leaders or whatever, this needs to be broadcast and put on YouTube. And every single official meeting and all official business should be logged and available to the people who are supposed to be your boss.
Right.
Be able to see. So I don't want people to trust me. I'm going to say, I'm just going to show you. And the direct democracy part is, nobody told me I can't do this. As far as I check the laws, I'll sign a legally binding agreement. They'll say that, like, I'll take either a heavy financial penalty, right, or promise to resign from my post, with using this legally binding, document to say that, like, I will vote how my constituents want me to vote. We can set up through electronically. If you can get a mortgage online, I can set you up. You can vote securely online. Right. And so we can have a system where I want to incentivize second district constituents to vote. And so I'm saying, like, if you want this bill in Congress to go through, right, then we'll vote on it here in the second district, and I will vote as you want me to vote. So direct democracy. Sorry, go ahead.
And that was always the plan. When you look at the way the Haudenosaunee do their democracy, the people that represent us go back and live in our communities. They don't go to their mansions somewhere that are gated that you can't get into.
No.
They go back to their communities. The Haudenosaunee have a rule where if a lawmaker, if you could suggest a law at 8 years old. So that was their thought, was that, even children can have brilliant ideas. So by 8, if you go knocking on the door of your leader and your leader does not let you in to listen to you, then that's a strike against them. 3 strikes, they're out. And it's the same thing with the clan mothers, the women that ran the villages, but also were like our Supreme Court, approved the laws. 3 strikes, you're out. You are listening to your people. It doesn't matter what you're doing or what your concern is.
Yes, exactly. And there should be a system to hold you accountable.
Right.
And, one of the things is, like, term limits need to come in. Like, they shouldn't do more than 2 terms in Congress. We should get as many Congress people as we can to get as many voices in there, right, as we can.
Exactly.
And so, so offering direct democracy, right, and saying, like, abstaining in my platform, I'm abstaining from issues that are intractable, especially for New Yorkers, aren't going anywhere, right? Whether, and I'll name them, it's pro-choice or pro-life. I have, my own feelings on these things, right? It will not affect anything that I do. I will take a pledge to just abstain and be agnostic about these things, because I know there's a lot of people on the South Shore who see these both ways, and also who are very much on one side or the other, right? But I'm not going to let that get in the way of helping what I can help for South Shore Long Islanders, right? So and that's not going to change one way or the other. Even if Roe v. Wade was overturned tomorrow, New York is still going to have legal abortion.
Right. And that's where we, the people, also come in. This is where we have to take back our power. This is why I formed the Women's Oneness Project, was so that we could create a situation where people who are on opposite sides of the fence of an issue like abortion sit down and talk about it. And once we talk about it, and once we listen to each other, then we go to our Congress people like you, who have vowed to listen to us and say, hey, here's the solution we came up with. I always talk about how my sister Celia, who's listening now, my sister Celia and I were on the phone one day, and I think we came up with a brilliant solution to the immigration problem that was viable, that was compassionate, that could work over, I think it would take 5 years. I'm not going to go into it now because we're kind of running out of time. But regular people can sit down and figure out these solutions. And the problem is that Congress does not want these solutions.
No, they don't.
They don't want solutions. They want to keep us at each other's throats.
Yeah, so as long as you have an immigrant class, right, especially if they're undocumented, right, then they make convenient scapegoats. So actually, like, both and the Democrats say we're going to rescue you, and the Republicans say we're going to kick you out, but they're all in bed together, and because there's an incentive to have these individuals come here and try to work because our system supports that. That's why. Right. No other reason. And if we really wanted to stop this, we would lock up those farm owners and those meat packers and whoever else is using those labor, right? And I wouldn't want this to happen. Or if you're these local contractors, like if you're a roofer and you hire day laborers, well, I'm sure if you got a 5-year sentence at the end of that, you wouldn't do that.
Right.
Right. But we don't do that. And I wouldn't want the little guy to be hit with that. Really, it's like the problems with these bigger, ConAgras and these giants.
Well, look how long it took us not that this is semi-comparable, I think, but, with prostitution, where we were always arresting the prostitutes and never the Johns. And then finally we decided, well, if we're really going to get rid of this situation, then we need to arrest both, which of course that's just the surface answer to that. The real answer to that is to create a culture where men and women truly are equal and where men and women truly respect each other. Yes. And then you don't have a culture that creates that situation.
Absolutely. So, well, again, I think, prostitution laws exist they're class specific because, there are a lot of people who, will morally compromise themselves. And I don't think it's a moral compromise. I'm just using that language. Morally compromise themselves for money.
Yes. I
think that's safe. And so using, putting shame on sexuality. And I think a very libertarian angle on that, I don't think, it's, I think people should be free to do what they want in that regard. And the more you criminalize it, actually doesn't help get rid of the problem. So it just creates more marginalized people. More criminals and we don't need more laws and people in jail.
Exactly. So Phil, we have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I want you to tell us anything else you feel you need to tell us about what your platform is, what you believe in our final 5 minutes, and that would be great.
All right. Yeah. So I believe in American exceptionalism in a real way. And I believe in this empire in a way where it's like I've had to kind of compromise with myself where I don't always agree with how we carry this out. But I do believe that in the context of history, that this is the greatest nation that has ever existed. And if we can use the American military and our power all across the world on humanitarian missions and actually change the world to not serve, military industrial complex or the t-shirt industrial complex, whatever it is that just even asking our police officers to chase down people who steal, a $40 sweatshirt, right? That now the police officer, the person who stole it, the manager of the store, all their lives are in danger, right? Even though Walmart or Target, whoever it is, has already accounted for that insurance and loss, that's already built in and they don't lose any money. And yet our military and our police and everybody is kind of forced to keep this system going, right? So I believe in American exceptionalism. I think we're the greatest country on earth. I think that in the context of history and have the powerful, I think we're the most tolerant empire in the history of the world.
Yes.
And I think if we lean into those things rather than curse our past, which is very, very ugly. It is. And if we can acknowledge that, but still say, but at the same time, look at the things that we've done.
Right.
Despite this, we didn't go all the way. We didn't go full, okay, well, then you're right. I guess we did do that. So I guess genocide everybody now. That's not what we did.
No.
We went the other way and we continue to get better. We always get better. And so I call on people to stop calling each other names on the side of each other and stop splitting yourself up into these factions and understand that the powers that be are exploiting you in one way or the other. They're telling you what you want to hear. They're getting you angry about the right things so that they can continue to hold their power. And they'll tell you that don't use this language and you can't run for office. And, you wore a questionable costume 20 years ago, so you can't possibly. No, stop all of that silliness. The things that matter are the things that matter. Don't fall for the gotchas. Don't fall for the easy pickings. Don't fall for, hey, did you hear what they said about you? Do you know what they're really doing? Anybody who says that stuff to you and tells you that there's a secret cabal of people out here, but they're also like working people, we're not enemies of each other. And I think the quicker that we can get past this red-blue paradigm and start electing independents and start putting the lens on the people who are really writing the checks, you know, with Pearson for education, right? Or the pharmaceutical companies when it comes to health and mental health.
Big agriculture. Big
ag, yeah, all this stuff. It's like, you know, we can have libertarian principles and socialistic principles, right? We can have both. And actually, I think we are a fiercely independent nation. And we are free enterprise, and we should absolutely celebrate that. But letting corporations crush free enterprise is not the way to promote free enterprise.
Exactly.
Small businesses are getting murdered. So go to philmacforcongress.com. I'll be releasing a hopefully viral campaign video coming up. Again, direct democracy, mental health and education is pretty much the core of the platform. I'm agnostic on Second Amendment, abortion issues, on a lot of, factionalized. Yeah. Identity politics type stuff where people are just saying like, we're going to put you in this bag or this bag and it's us versus them. I reject all of it. And I will take a pledge where I won't take votes on that stuff. So philmacforcongress.com. Maddi, I'll try to give you a minute to say something, but I appreciate the platform. We'll talk again.
Well, thanks, Phil. Yes, we will talk again. I'm very excited to support your campaign. It really inspires me, and you always teach me new things whenever I talk to you. And I believe that your passion and your intelligence and your research on this is what can convince people, is that we need more young people like you who have really done their research, who really are independent, who understand what it means to make change and to hold the government accountable and to really get our government to the point where it serves us, not a bunch of corporations and a bunch of politicians. So I want to thank you all for listening so much to Sacred Democracy. I want to thank you, Phil, so much for being on today. And I'm very, very thankful to Bobby for keeping this all going during this pandemic. And thank you, Strong Island Radio, Strong Island Entertainment. And I love you all. Thank you so much. Stay well, stay healthy, take care of yourself. There's plenty of information out there on taking care of yourself. So you can do it. We can do it together. Thank you all. And we're out. We're out of here. Bye, Phil. So nice to have you on again.
See you later.